Hello and welcome everybody to Tuesday night deck building. Today we're going to look at a very interesting card that has come out recently called Alpha Quadrant Alliance. It's a first in that it is a quadruple treaty allowing you to play Federation, Klingon, Bajorans and Romulans together. It comes with some strings attached. I've tried to build 2 decks so far with it, and I'm not quite happy with either of them. So this is going to be another probably unsuccessful take at how to make Alpha Quadrant Alliance work in an interesting way. So let's have a look at what the card does. Let's go here. So that's the Alpha Quadrant Alliance. Plays on table if you seeded missions only in the Alpha Quadrant, so there's our first restriction. Your DS9 Federation, DS9 Romulan, DS9 Klingon and DS9 Bajoran cards are compatible. You may not play Cardassian or Dominion cards. So a lot of no-goes for us. We can't seed missions outside the Alpha Quadrant, we can't team up with Dominion or Cardassian, and it only extends to DS9 icon Federation, Klingon, Romulan and Bajoran cards. Now this little DS9 icon is not found on any Decipher printed cards. It's one that can be given to cards by a new mechanic that came out in one of the virtual sets, and that's going to be the first seed card that we need for this deck. And it's called Reshape the Quadrant. It says seeds on table. You may download one and this strange red icon here. You may download one of these cards, your Norse, personal, and ships that have a Star Trek Deep Space Nine property logo. That's the thing in the upper right corner. They gain this DS9 icon, even if not in play. So basically this limits us to cards that have the Star Trek Deep Space Nine property logo, so cards that were taken from the DS9 series, no Next Generation, no films, and so on. Okay, now we need to seed this card, Reshape the Quadrant, and then it downloads one of these Warp Core cards, and for that we need this one here, Staging Ground. This is downloaded. As you can see, it has this little red icon here. And it can play on Starbase 375. That's a card that has not been released yet. It's probably one from an upcoming expansion, or docking pylons at Deep Space Nine. Now, Deep Space Nine does exist, and docking pylons do exist as well. So these are the next cards that we will need. DS9 is, of course, a card everyone knows. Not everybody is familiar with playing with Norse, as they have a strange mechanic with these so-called sites that many people have never bothered learning properly about. That's really not important for this deck. What is important is that we need DS9 and we need docking pylons as one of the sites. So we'll just take them out, put them here for a moment, because that's the target where we can play our ships then. We don't really need to bother with all the other things that DS9 or Norse do. We are only going to use it for 2 mechanics, basically. Okay, let's read on here. This Staging Ground in turn then lets us download Alpha Quadrant Alliance. So these 2 cards are downloaded by Reshape the Quadrant, and then one of them downloads the other. So we get them into play at the beginning of the game for the cost of 1 seed card only. And then it says you may not report personnel for free. That's a pretty harsh restriction, because free plays are usually what makes a deck work. Instead here we have to give up any free plays, and there is no way around it. But in place of your normal card play, you may report 1 DS9 ship native to Alpha Quadrant here, with up to 3 compatible DS9 personnel native to Alpha Quadrant, each of a different affiliation, and up to 1 equipment aboard. So we have to give up all our free plays that we could usually do, personal free plays, and we then can convert our 1 regular card play into a card play of 1 ship, up to 3 personnel, and 1 equipment. That sounds very powerful. 5 cards in for one card play. It's not as super good as it sounds though. 3 personal a turn is, in this day and age, more or less par for the course. Every tournament deck you find these days will usually be able to play 3 personal per turn, sometimes more than that. There are decks that have very consistent download engines that can put more than 3 personal into play every turn. So that's really about the level of power that you can expect in today's OTF format. What is very good though is that you can get a ship out every turn. But the big problem is, in order to use this successfully, you have to make sure that you can actually do it every turn. You have to make sure that you have a ship and 3 personnel of different affiliations in hand every turn, and maybe even an equipment too, in order to use it as effectively as possible. And that's where things get really tricky. We don't want to use cards like Handshake or Kiva's Farjo or any of the other draw engines that require your card play, because our one card play is all we get. We can't play anything else for free. And wasting a turn on Handshake is essentially a lost turn in this deck. So we need to make sure that we draw enough cards some other way. And that's what we are going to do with the other seed cards. So we need Reshape the Quadrant. We need Deep Space Nine. Now, as an easy draw engine that we can use here, we can use the virtual card New Arrivals. New Arrivals is a very nice one. Seats on table. Once each turn, you may play a universal personnel you do not already have in play for free. End of each turn, you may draw an extra card. Discard incident if you have more than one personnel if you play more than one personnel for free on any turn. Since we cannot play personnel for free anyway, this part does not bother us. So essentially, this is just an extra end of turn card draw at the cost of 1 seat slot, and that's brilliant value for your money. So that goes in without any further questions. So that gives us 1 regular card draw and the New Arrivals draw. However, we want to make sure we draw at least 4 cards every turn to make sure we get the chip, we get those 3 personnel. So, since we're playing DS9, we can also use a different draw engine, and that's Bajoran Resistance Cell. Bajoran Resistance Cell has a lot of text. It starts with, once each turn, your Bajoran Resistance personnel may report for free to your facility or to your base or region planet and so on. We don't care about this. We're not reporting personnel for free anyway. What is interesting here is the other part. Once each turn, you may download a Bajoran Espionage card to one of your unsolved missions, limit 1 per mission, then draw 2 cards if you have at least 2 Bajoran Resistance personnel in play. And that is a very convenient draw engine here. There are a lot of Bajoran Resistance personnel with the DS9 property logo. I think there's only one with the Voyager logo, but the majority are DS9 logo. So as soon as we have 2 of them in play, we can then download an Espionage card every turn, put them on our mission, and we get 2 card draws for that. Since we have a maximum of 6 missions, that means we can do this thing on 6 turns during the game. But since in the current OTF environment, many games are over anyway before the 7th or the 8th turn start, that's about as good as it gets. We get 2 additional card draws every turn, more or less for the duration of the game in a regular game. So that means we're going to use a lot of Bajoran Resistance personnel in our deck. We're going to have a look at the deck cards in a moment. So that brings us to 4 draws per turn. But that's still not enough, because we cannot be sure that we always get that 1 ship and those 3 personnel of different affiliations. We need to draw a lot more. So we are going to spend more seed slots in more draw engine infrastructure. Since we're running Deep Space Nine, that allows us to run sites, we are also going to play Study Divergent History. Another extremely powerful draw engine. It says seats or place on guest quarters or the intendant's quarters or your mirror quadrant ship or a headquarters. We can use guest quarters because that's a site that we can play on DS9. You get 6 sites at the beginning of the game for free. So with docking pylons and guest quarters, that takes up 2 of our slots, and then we can seed study Divergent history there. Now, what does it do? Twice each turn, you may stop 2 personnel present from opposite quadrants to draw a card. Doubles bonus point boxes or file mission report this quadrant, we don't care about that. We really only care about the part that we can draw 2 cards. And what we need to do for that is stop personnel from opposing quadrants. So opposing quadrants in this case, that means Alpha Quadrant and Mirror Quadrant. So we need to make sure that we have Mirror Quadrant personnel in play. Remember, staging ground says the personnel we can report with our ship have to be native to the Alpha Quadrant. So we cannot play Mirror Quadrant personnel that way. We have to find a different way. However, the card doesn't say anything about getting them into play otherwise. So what we can do is we can seed Assign Mission Specialists. Assign Mission Specialists is an oldie but goldie. You seed it, and then you may instantly download to one of your outposts up to 2 different mission specialists, personnel whose only skill is a regular skill. And we will use that. The 2 mission specialists we use will be Loreva and McKay. They both have the DS9 property logo, so they gain the DS9 icon. And they also are both from the Mirror Quadrant. Now, Assign Mission Specialist says they may download to one of your outposts. DS9 is not an outpost, it's a station. It's a different type of facility, but it's not an outpost. So we also need to include an outpost. Let's take the Bajoran outpost for the moment, and maybe we'll change that to a different color later on. So with Assign Mission Specialists, these guys would be in play at our outpost. And that's more or less the basic setup that we will need. 7 seed cards that give us potentially 6 draws every turn. We will have to use some personnel every turn, stop them. That means we can't use them for a mission attempt. But that's usually worth it. With 7 seed cards, drawing 6 cards per turn, that should give us enough material to work with. As you can see, I've also added a couple of other seed cards that I want to use, mainly because the deck as it would play right now is more or less a straightforward solver, and that's really not something I'm particularly interested here, because there are lots of other solvers that you can play. So what I'd like to do is focus a little bit more on the battle aspect. This treaty was part of the Dominion War part, so I'll try and put some battle component in. And for that, I'm going to add a couple of other cards. That's going to be a Battle Bridge Door to give us more firepower in ship battle. I'm also going to include an alternate universe doorway, simply because there might be personnel that we use that have the alternate universe icon. If we find that we can play the deck just as well without it personnel, that's another seed card that we can cut. But usually I start out by playing or by planning with an alternate universe doorway anyway, and if it turns out I don't need it, then it's an easy cut. We are definitely going to use the Q's Tent, since there will be cards that we will download. We don't want them to clog our hand, so the Q's Tent is the place we need. And we are also going to include a Defend Homeworld, simply for the once per game download a security personnel part here. And then we will also include Risk is Our Business. I'm going to talk about that later. Okay, so ignore those 5 extra seed cards for the moment, and let's make sure that we know what we need to do in order to generate our draws. As we said, we're going to use Bajoran Resistance Cell. For that, we need a lot of Bajoran personnel, of course. And there are, if my count is right, 12 DS9 Bajoran Resistance personnel. Let's put them on the table. There's Linales, Shakar, Raska, Varel, the triple affiliation version of Kira. There's Gant, he's got the alternate universe icon. Let's keep him in for the moment, because we have the AU door. There's the medical science guy. There's Sporum. He can download a Starfleet phaser, can be useful against some dilemmas, but he can also exchange himself for a Bajoran leader in your discard pile. So if somebody like Shakar or Kira that we need for their skills is killed, then Borum can sacrifice himself and bring them back. A useful ability in some cases. There's Lupaza. There's Kira Taban. Linaris. And there's also Tanalos. So that's 12 Bajoran personnel. Let's keep them in for the moment, because we want to have a resistance personnel in our starting hand. We want to get this Bajoran resistance cell draw engine going as quickly as possible. Since all but one of these guys are unique, we are not going to clog our deck by stocking additional copies, maybe of him, Gant, but he doesn't really bring that much to the table. Medical, if you have a look at the guys we put here, medical is actually a skill that appears quite often, I think 5 times on these resistance guys. Resistance itself is a mostly useless skill in the game. Youth is useful in some situations, but not always. Anthropology can be very useful, but we should have enough sources of that anyway. So let's keep it with those 12 personnel. So in order to make sure that we can use our play engine, the ship and the 3 personnel effectively, we need to have personnel of different affiliations. So what we're trying to do here is to keep the ratios somewhat consistent. So ideally, every turn we want to have a ship in hand, and we want to have personnel of 3 different affiliations. So I'll try to spread it out a little bit and have about the same number of Bajorans and Klingons and Federation guys, and then a 4th group of non-Alliance and Romulans. So that should give us a nice spread. I'll stick with the 12 Bajorans for now and work with 10 Federation guys, 10 Klingons and 10 others. And also 10 ships. And then we will add some other cards that we need. The idea is to bring us to about, or almost exactly 60 cards. Because with 60 cards and 10 ships, 10 of that, 10 of that, 10 of that, the math works out that you have a, if I remember correctly, a 74% chance of drawing that particular card in your starting hand. So 10 ships in 60 cards, if you draw 7, you should have a ship in the starting hand in 3 of your 4 games. Now that might turn out not to be enough. In that case, we will have to tinker with the ratios a little bit. Okay, if you look at these guys, they have a nice skill spread. We already have a lot of medical, but definitely not enough of all the others. But that's a nice start here. Now, I said I'd like to focus a little bit on the battle aspect of this period in the Deep Space Nine story arc. So my idea was, since we're going to play a ship every turn, ideally, to use those ships not only for ferrying guys from one mission to another, but also to fly up and down the space line and threaten the opponent and maybe do some opportunistic battle if the chance arises. So we are going to stock a lot of ships. Let's have a look. I'll have some birds of prey here. There should be more. There's a modified watcher. There's also a Bajoran ship. There's a Federation ship. There's another smaller Bajoran vessel. There's a big Klingon one. And strangely enough, there's the Starship Enterprise that also has a DS9 icon, I think from the Trials and Tribulations episode. Now, why have I picked these ships? Mostly because the Klingon ships have their matching commanders. You've got the Ning Tao, which is commanded by Kor. He should be somewhere. No, that's Kang. That's Martok. So there's this matching commander. Martok can be matching commander for the Rotaran or also for the Negvar. He works for, no, there he is. He works for both of them. And also he gives your Klingon ships at the same location weapons +2. So maybe you can get 3 ships together and that's enough to fire on an outpost or something, or simply 2 little bird of prey that with 1 personal aboard that can take out 1 bigger ship that the opponent has left out in the open somewhere. That's the general idea. So Kang is the commander of the Lucara, and for the Koraga we have a new version of Worf, Son of Moog. That's this guy here. Dual affiliation personnel are very useful in this case, because when you play the cards with staging ground, you can decide whether you want to use his non-aligned or his Klingon icon. So they are very flexible when it comes to getting personnel of 3 different affiliations in hand to drop with your ship. There's the modified Watcher that also has a matching commander in Chuvok, and Negvar, we also said, can be commanded by Martok. So that's why these Klingons go in. They don't have a lot of scientific skills, but they've got leadership or officer, which is important to initiate battle. They've got honor, which is good. And we are going to add some more Klingons. We're going to use Mark, who has good skills all around. Honor geology is great against one of the most popular dilemmas these days, rules of obedience. Transporter skill is also a very useful one. We'll add Tumek. He brings science, exobiology, and he can special download Grilka. She will go into our Q's tent, because she can also be quite useful in particular situations. There's also Ngaren. She has science and astrophysics, which makes her one of the more useful DS9 icon Klingons. And then we have some slots open for Klingons that we will fill depending on what our skill needs are. So 12 Bajorans for the moment, 8 Klingons, and we've got 10 ships here. Quick word about the other ships. Assault vessel, simply because it has 8 range and a tractor beam and can be staffed without the gold star, and we've got lots of Bajoran guys, so this should be a very easy ship to staff. The Kitara has a special download of Souls of the Dead. That's an interrupt that allows you to retrieve 1 card from the discard pile, which can be good in critical situations where you need that 1 personal that died earlier to get back. The Magellan is in there mostly because it's a ship with 9 range and a holodeck, which can be important against one particular dilemma. We are going to use missions that all have span 3, so that's a bit more flexible than the others. But ideally, we want to use the Klingon ships to make cloak, fly to where the opponent is, and then wait until the moment arises, and fly them over with minimal staffing, and then use whatever other ships we have available to do missions. And we'll also use the Starship Enterprise. It's tricky to staff because we need an original series personnel. Thankfully, we can download one immediately with its special download, and that's going to be Captain Kirk. He's in there because he allows battle against non-Federation personnel. Usually with our Federation cards, we couldn't do battle because of the Federation attack restrictions, so we always need to make sure that we don't accidentally have a Federation personnel aboard the ship that we want to attack with. But with Kirk we have another free go at some affiliations. And also he can download Captain's Log. You've seen the Klingon ships with the matching commanders, so the idea is with Captain's Log to boost them a little bit more. Okay, let's put him in the tent for the moment. Let's have a look at the other personnel I've included so far. I've simply put in some of the Federation heavy hitters. Jadzia Dax has lots of useful skills and good attributes. Bashir is not necessarily needed for his medical because we've got a lot of those anyway, but he can special download Kukalaka, and an integrity boost can be important. There's the teddy bear. Miles, he's got double engineer, he's got transporter skill, useful guy all around. This new version of Elim Garak, who has security and engineer and diplomacy. Linara Khan, very good with the scientific skills. I've included the future version of Nog. It has engineer, diplomacy, honor, physics, and it can special download the Ready Room Door. Ready Room Door lets us download a Captain's Order card, so we can use that one to download Captain's Log to boost our ships. So between that one and Starship Enterprise, which downloads Captain Kirk, who can download Captain's Log, we should have some access to that card to boost our ships. Right, let's have a look at the other cards that are here. I've included this version of Odo, double diplomacy and security, and when he leaves play, when he dies, we could download another Odo or Jadzia Dex. So if Jadzia Dex isn't in play already, he could download her when he dies. So that's for the moment 7 Federation guys. So again, there's room for more personnel depending on what skill gaps we identify later on. And there are some slots left for non-Alliance and Romulans. Let's start with the Romulans. There aren't that many DS9 icon Romulans, but Selweth is very useful with her engineer, astrophysics, geology. Ruon, diplomacy and security. Lovok, science, transporter skill can be very useful. There's also Morn. It's always good to have a greed personnel with cunning 8, because Chula, the game, is a very popular dilemma, and a greed personnel with cunning 8 makes sure that you don't have to suffer the 2-turn stop. Also, when he's at Quark's Bar, he can potentially give you another card draw. So if you get him out early and we use Q's Quark's Bar as one of the sites, that could give us another card draw. Rebecca Sullivan is in there. She has great skills all around, nothing fancy, but honor geology can be useful, biology and medical always, and astrophysics too. And there's also Lita. Lita is mostly in here for her special download of Dabo. Dabo is an event, or an incident actually, that allows you to wager cards that you have put into your discard pile somewhere or other before, and then just play the gambling game and see if you can probe the correct card from the top of your deck, and if it's the correct one, you can score points. Ideally 6 points per turn. So sometimes if you get her out early and you can score 6 points consistently for the first 5 turns, that's equivalent to doing 1 mission. 30 extra points can mean that you get by with doing 2 missions only. Even if you get her out late in the game, she sometimes is enough with her double download to make up for points that you've lost to hire the viewer or lack of preparation, or to allow you to run through an Edo probe that you would maybe stop otherwise. So it's, whenever I play Bajorans or DS9, I always try and make room for her. Right, so you see there are still a lot of open slots in our count towards 60 cards that we could include to add skills that we find we need. Before we check for that, we also need to make sure that we have all the espionage cards that we need. We have 4 espionage cards here in the deck. We are going to put 1 copy of Espionage Bajoran on Cardassian and 1 of Bajoran on Dominion in the Q's tent. Q's tent cannot have more than 1 copy of a card, so we need to put 4 of those in the deck, meaning they can be potentially dead draws. We want to download them from the deck, but if they end up in our hand, we can also download them from our hand. And then I've included 3 copies of Going to the Top, simply to help us get more personnel into play. If you have 2 command personnel together on a facility, shouldn't be too difficult, then download a compatible personnel with leadership ×2, once per game per affiliation. So we can use this for more than 1 guy. I've included 3 copies here. So we could do this for Mr. Sisko from the Mirror Universe. Going to the Top says download to them. It specifically says where you need to download him, and that also means that we can bypass the quadrant reporting restrictions here. Even though he's from the Mirror Quadrant, we don't care about them because we're not reporting via a site or a facility. We are reporting via the game text of this interrupt here. So we can bring in Mr. Sisko with Biology, Navigation, Honor. And we can do the same for a Bajoran double leadership personnel. I've chosen Kai Wynn here because she has the special download of any Bajoran treaty. Of course, if somebody plays an interrupt that destroys our treaty, then we are left there standing like a muppet. We can't play our deck anymore. This is why it's important to have some backup plan. That's why there are some cards in the deck that allow you to retrieve stuff from the discard pile, the Souls of the Dead download on the Bajoran ship that I've talked about before. And also here, Kai Wynn, who can download any Bajoran treaty, so we have a backup in our Q's tent to get out should we need it. There's also Captain Kirk. So apart from the download on the Starship Enterprise, we can also download him with a Going to the Top. We could also download a Klingon with double leadership. I think Koloth would be another target. I've left it with the 3 for the moment. Let's have a look at the other cards I put in the tent. Let's put those guys back for the moment. Rilka is a personnel that can be downloaded by one of the Klingons. She's got Honor ×2, Leadership, Biology, and very good Integrity, Cunning, and decent Strength. So if you can download her in the middle of an attempt, that can sometimes be the necessary amount of attributes that you need to get through. There's an extra copy of Bajoran on Cardassian. There's an extra copy of Bajoran on Dominion. There's the backup treaty. There's the interrupt that the 1 ship downloads. There's the Starfleet Type 2 phaser that one of the Bajoran personnel can download. Sometimes the extra strength can make the difference. There's the Dabo for the bonus points that I've talked about. There's the Captain's Log that gives the ships with the matching commander board shields +3 and weapons +3. So that's the one card that really helps them be a threat in battle. And if we play that via the Ready Room Door, we can then put Ready Room Door on top of our deck and then use it on the next turn to download a different Captain's Order card. And that can be Defined Education Plaque that gives all our ships range +2. If you look at the Klingon ships, they have range 7. So mostly they will only get to 1 mission and back. And with the DDP out, you can usually make it to an extra mission every turn. And there's an oddball card here where no one has gone before. Why is that card in the deck? That's why we seeded Risk is Our Business. A lot of this text on this card refers to original series icons, but we don't care about that part. There's also a part that doesn't care about original series at all. and it starts at the end of the third line. At the start of your first mission attempt of each mission, you may download one of several options here, and one of them is where no one has gone before. So whenever we attempt our first mission, we can trigger this and download where no one has gone before, and then it allows us to Pac-Man move out of the one end of the space line and enter the other end. So that makes our ships even more threatening, because we are not hindered by the small range on the ship. We can just fly out on one side and enter the other side, and can sometimes get our opponents with their pants down. Also, it's very useful if we run into our Scytherians, which is often seated at the end of the space line. If you don't have to travel 16, 18, 25 range, wasting 4 turns, you can just hop around the other end of the space line, that's a valid movement, and then score those 15 points for the Scytherians easily, and then just move back the way you came from. So that's a card I'm finding myself including more and more often in decks that don't have anything to do with Kirk's era. Right, so let's put all these cards in the deck. We are at 52 cards, and now it's time to have a look at our skill matrix. For that, I'm going to go in the CCG deck builder, where I have entered the cards that we have so far. And it gives us a nice breakdown of the skills that we currently have. And if we look at the numbers, we find that anthropology is a bit lacking, archaeology definitely with only 2. It's not a particularly important skill, but there is one dilemma that requires 2 archaeology to get through, quantum leap, and there is no trickery around that. For that we need to cough up security and 2 archaeology, so that's definitely something where we can improve the skill matrix that we have for the moment. Computer skill, strangely with only 4 instances here, is also something that we can improve. Diplomacy with only 5, that's also something we should look at. Engineer is fine. Geology can be better. Greed could also be better, but we're happy with the 1 person that we have. Honor we've got covered. Leadership should be enough to initiate battle whenever we want. 10 medical is also fine, as is 9 navigation. 7 officers could be a bit more. Physics looks good. Science definitely could be improved. Security is fine. Stellar cartography is completely lacking for the moment. There's only one wall dilemma in the game that specifically requires stellar cartography, so that's a gap in the skill matrix that we could risk. We don't need to go out of our way to include a stellar cartography at any cost, but if we find a person that has it, that's fine. Transporter skill, this is definitely something that we should look at, because there's one particular dilemma that needs it. Let's bring it up for a moment. And that's this one, the Loli Ju. Unless anthropology and weight him and transporter skill in a staff ship in orbit, 2 personal opponent's choice are killed. This is the one reason where you find people leaving a transporter skill on a staff ship when they attempt a planet mission. This dilemma doesn't go away when it hits, and opponent's choice kills are super powerful, so you cannot have enough anthropology and transporter skill to make sure you can play around this dilemma, because the risks of running into it are quite severe. So if we can improve our number of anthro and transporter skill, that would be great. All right, what about the other skills? Treachery with only 3 is a bit low. There is rules of obedience, one of the very popular dilemmas. There it is. It first kills personnel with highest integrity or fewest skill icons, opponent's choice, and to get past requires then Geo and 2 honor, or 2 security and 2 treachery. So with only 3 treachery in the deck, the second option, the security option to get around this, doesn't look good. So we should make sure that we have enough geology and honor. Honor we've got covered, but geology is something that we could add. And the rest looks surprisingly solid. So really a bit more anthropology, archaeology. Biology couldn't hurt. Medical crisis asks for 2 biology and something else. But we could get by with that. Diplomacy, I'd like to see a bit more of. And maybe also the geology and science. But as I said, the ratios at the moment should allow us to include a couple personal more without completely wrecking the deck at the moment. So I'm going to have a look at the TrackCC database and use the search function. When we have a look at the filter that says property logo, we can choose Deep Space Nine, so that makes sure it only gives us eligible personnel. Let's put it on non-aligned for the moment and see if there are any good guys we've missed. So let's see, we want to find a geology personnel. Hit the search function, and then it gives us a lot of options. We are going to check the mirror quadrant icon to make sure we are not presented with any of those options. And of course it gives us Rebecca Sullivan. We already know about her. But there's also Shankar. Officer, we said we could use more. Archaeology, geology, treachery, those are all useful skills. And he also downloads any phaser or disruptor. We already have a phaser in our deck anyway that Borum can download, so this will be a second way to access that phaser. So Shankar looks like a good option. So let's go into the deck and let's put him in. Right, let's have a look. Maybe the Romulan guys also have geologists to offer. Selweth we've already included, so no luck here. Maybe we can find someone in the Federation crew. Here we have Enrique. He has got geology and also computer skill, which is one of the skills we are quite light on. We could also use Esri Dex. Diplo, we said we could use more anthropology, also science. She looks quite good. Lieutenant Nagata, computer skill, Geo Honor Youth. He would also give us backup staffing for the Starship Enterprise, but that's really an edge case here. Thomas Riker is a card I've used quite a bit in other decks. He's got useful skills, leadership, security, treachery. So I think I'll go with him for the moment. Nope, that's the version we want. Okay, what were some of the other skill gaps? Archaeology. Let's have a look at archaeologists. Of course, we've already got Jitsia. That's another version of Jitsia. Patrick, says Matthews, Science, Exo, Archeo Youth, and Taylor Moore, Security, Leadership, Archaeology. None of those options seems particularly appealing here for the moment. Let's have a look at Klingons. And there's one we could definitely include, Meville. She's got archaeology, biology, medical, stellar cartography. Also, she's a dual affiliation personnel, so she makes it a bit easier to find the 3 personnel of different affiliations that we need to report with the ship. Where are you hiding? There's a copy of Meville. So let's also double check in the deck here. So we've included Thomas Riker. We've included Shanker. And also Meville. And 4 archaeology already looks a lot friendlier than before. Science is still a big problem, so let's find some science guys. Let's start with the Klingons here. There's of course the Klingon version of Jizia Dex. Vodin, Science Diplostellar, fills a lot of gaps here. Yito, Science Stellar Transporter Skill, that's probably the one we should be looking at, because Transporter Skill is definitely something that we need. So let's add Yito. Also yet him at Lucky. Right. I think at this point we can have a look at the deck and see what's still missing. Of course, the missions are something that we are going to need in order to have a legal deck. The ones that I've chosen here are these ones. Let's start with Characterize Neutrino. We need this one simply because we need a Beta region location where we can seed DS9. Usually, when you have a deck like that, you would find a lot more Beta region missions. But I think we're going for the confuse the opponent approach here. And we're going to use missions in lots of different regions. Beta region, Chintoka, Demilitarized Zone, and also the new Talon system region for the planet. Investigate quarantine and reallocate dividends. The idea is that we have DS9 at Characterize Neutrino missions, and then we have to set up the outpost at a different mission. Now, looking at the missions I've chosen, you see that none of them have the Bajoran icon, so we cannot actually see the Bajoran outpost, but that's not important because all our guys are compatible, so we can choose an outpost that we can seed at the majority of missions. So if we look at them, we find the Federation icon on 4 of them, we find the Klingon icon on 4 of them, so it's either the Federation or the Klingon one. And if we go into the deck editor, let's take out the Bajoran outpost. And I think we're going for the Federation one. This one, Starbase 247, is better than the regular outpost in that it has a lot more shields and gives you a special download. However, it can only seed at Federation space missions. So in that case, it's not as flexible. If instead we opt for a regular outpost, let's go for the Klingon outpost, we can also seed it at the planet mission, and that gives us a bit more flexibility around the space line. So let's stick with that for the moment. Right, and then we can give this one a test run. So let's clear this. There's the deck we've just changed. Let's load it. And then we start by seeding missions. Let's assume we have a friendly opponent who keeps on their side of the space line, and we just pull out our missions and take them as they come. Of course, if our opponent has seeded a Bajor region and our characterized neutrino has to be seeded in that region, of course we want to put all our missions as close to there as possible. Right, let's have a look at the seed cards. We have of course seeded our dilemmas, the battle bridge, the alternate universe door, the Q's tent. So that's the doorway phase that actually comes before the missions. And then in the mission phase, we put these down. Then we would add dilemmas. So far, we haven't added any. Also in the dilemma phase, we would seed DS9 with all the sites. For the moment, we only have the docking pylons and the guest quarters. So we have 4 more slots for other sites. We would seed the Klingon outpost here. Defend homeworld, be a hidden agenda, risk is our business. Bajoran resistance cell. Assign mission specialists, downloads our 2 guys to the outpost. New arrival simply seeds on table for the extra draw. Reshape the quadrant. Lets us download staging ground. It has to be played on the docking pylons. And that in turn downloads the Alpha Quadrant Alliance. And then our last seed card would be Study Divergent History that seeds on guest quarters. Alright, we shuffle our deck, we draw a starting hand of 7. Sorry, that's the last card that needs to go back on top of the deck. And let's have a look at the first starting hand. We can breathe a sigh of relief because we find a ship and personnel of different affiliations. So what's important on the first turn is that we are able to staff a ship to fly from DS9 to the outpost and back in order to set up the draw engine. So as nice as those big ships are, with 4 staffing icons, it can be difficult to staff them on the first turn. So the smaller ones are definitely preferable here. So our one and only card play will be, instead of the regular card play, we drop a ship with 3 personnel. We drop a ship to the docking pylons, the Koraga. We definitely want to have a resistance personnel out. We definitely want to have Morn. And we can also use Thomas Riker. Now our problem here is that we can't actually staff the ship because we haven't drawn into a single Klingon. That's why having a good ratio of Klingons is important here. We still have a way of playing around this because we can use Defend Homeworld to discard it and then download a security Klingon. That's the Koraga, which is commanded by Worf, son of Moog, so it would make sense to actually download him then. He is a civilian, so we would use one of the sites that allows civilians to report there. That's Promenade Shops, if I remember correctly. But you can find a lot of Klingons that have security and that report to one of the sites, so that shouldn't be a problem. So Worf would also report to the station. He would flip to Klingon mode. And then we have a Klingon aboard and can actually staff the ship. Meaning the Koraga would undock with all the guys aboard, fly for a range of 3 to the Klingon outpost, pick up these guys, and then for 3 more would fly back, dock at the docking pylons, and then we would send McKay to the guest quarters, Loreva to the guest quarters, and 2 of the Alpha Quadrant personnel we just played, Tana Loss and Thomas Riker. And then we could use the Study Divergent History for card draws. We stop a Mirror and Alpha for 1 card draw. We stop Mirror and Alpha for another card draw. At this point, we only have 1 Resistance personnel in play, so we cannot download an Espionage card yet. We could also have downloaded a Bajoran Resistance personnel with our Defend Homeworld download. For example, Shakar has Resistance and Security, so we could have downloaded him and then start triggering the Espionage downloads to get our draw engine going. So that would also have been a valid way. Right. As one of our sites, we could also include Quark's Bar. Then we could have Morn walk over to Quark's Bar, which would give us another card draw. We're going to have a look at that site in a moment. But that was really lucky to have him on the first turn. Let's end our turn by drawing our regular card and also by drawing another one from the new arrivals. And then we should ideally have another hand with a ship and 6 personnel, or 3 personnel of different affiliations in play. Let's play the second turn. We are going to report the Starship Enterprise with Shankar as non-aligned, Miles O'Brien as Federation, and Gant as Bajoran. The ship doesn't have to be staffed for that, we just report it with those 3 personnel. We can also use the special download of any Federation personnel on the ship to download James T. Kirk, and he in turn can then download Captain's Log, and immediately our ships become a bit more threatening. We can then stop these 4 guys again for 2 draws. We've also played a second Resistance personnel, so from now on we can download Espionage cards from our deck. Let's take out 1. That's on Dominion, so let's play it on a Dominion icon mission. Let's take this one. Draw 2 more cards for that. And as you can see, the ships are coming nicely. The Klingon personnel are hiding a little bit, so we probably should add a few more of those since they make up the majority of our ships. We should also make sure that we have enough personnel to staff them. But that's the general idea of the deck. You draw 6 cards per turn to make sure that you have enough guys to use that report with 3 guys every turn. Now, what I don't particularly like is that it also gives us the option of, where is it? Over here. To also report 1 equipment aboard. That's something that so far I simply haven't been able to make work. It's such a tricky thing to balance the affiliations and the number of ships that whenever I decided to also abuse the free report of equipments, and there are many useful equipment cards you could add, then the deck turned out to be too unreliable. And I simply couldn't play personnel at the speed I wanted to play. There were a lot more turns where I didn't have a ship or nearly enough personnel to make use of it, and it was more or less a wasted turn. So I've gone away from the equipment part in this deck here. But already on the second turn, we now have, in this case, the Koraga with a matching commander and captain's logout. So that would be weapons 11. We also have the Starship Enterprise with Captain Kirk out. That would be another weapons of 8. And Kirk could also attack. So that's 19 weapons there. In the battle bridge, we would probably run the Klingon tactic, the generic one, the Pulse Disruptor, attack bonus +2 if you have a Klingon ship firing. That's one option. if you plan to do battle with mostly Klingons. Or you could also use full phaser spread that has 3 attack anyway and 2 defense, and also attack bonus +1 if you're a Galaxy class ship firing. If you find yourself in a situation where you have Captain Kirk aboard the USS Magellan, that's a Galaxy class ship, then you could have that 1 extra attack, but that's not really necessary. What's interesting here is the damage effect. This one randomly kills 1 science or stellar cartography personnel. So if we decide to do battle or play damage dilemmas, we could pair those dilemmas with ones that ask for science, like scientific method that needs 3 science to get through. So that could be useful. Of course, if our opponent doesn't have anyone with these skills aboard the ship that is damaged, then it's just a wasted kill opportunity. We're trying to kill someone with that skill, but if there's nobody there, everybody survives. So it's a double-edged sword in that respect. But those are the 2 tactics that I'm going to put in the deck. So let's add a couple of full phaser spreads and also the pulse disruptors. Right, we also said we need some more sites. We're definitely going to include Quark's Bar, because that's the one we need for Dabo and also for Morn to do his thing. We are also going to include the Science Lab, simply because we are seeding our Deep Space Nine at a space mission, and with the Science Lab we could use this text here to peek at the bottom seed card to gain knowledge of what dilemma is there. Again, double-edged sword, because there are dilemmas that punish you for peeking with methods like these, but every now and then it's worth trying this. I'm also going to use primary turbolift. It says compatible personnel may report, but not download here. So anybody who is compatible may report. We don't actually need the correct classification. What we cannot do is download them. So our download of Worf would have actually worked, as far as I know, because it says downloaded personnel and then we would report them. But we couldn't use the ops download. And we could also use the infirmary for medical personnel, or also simply the promenade shops. That's, I think, the one that I ended up using in the last version of this deck that I built. So with that, the deck should work. We found that we were lacking some Klingon personnel. So let's have a look at the Klingons again. And see if there is anyone that we've missed. Bamara is a great personnel that we could use. Bio, honor, physics, computer skill. Borak, cybernetics is not necessarily needed. Transporter skill would be nice. Chipok has double diplomacy. He could be useful. Gowron would be another commander of the Nekvar, if I remember correctly. But there is someone else I'm looking for. Where is it? Here, Merat. Transporter skill, honor, exobiology, anthropology, officer. I think she goes into the deck because transporter and anthro, as we said, are very important. So let's use her. We could absolutely use a second copy of Nagaran with the science. We might also go for the Wodin with the science and Diplo. Yeah, let's add him for the moment. simply to increase our chances of drawing into those personnel. Right, that for the moment only leaves the dilemmas. We have enough space for 18 dilemmas, so with a battle bridge door we could absolutely run a set around damage dilemmas, but we could also run whatever other dilemma we want. I'm just going to use a very quick dilemma setup that I've used when I was a complete newcomer to first edition, and that worked quite well for me, consisting of 2 combos for planet missions, 2 combos for space missions, and 2 combos for planet missions. Or for whatever other mission we have. For planet, I would start off with Hanonian Land Eel. And I'm going to put them in the Dyson Sphere to keep them separate for the moment. Very good wall. If they don't go in with a big crew right away, you get to kill either the lowest cunning or the fewest icons. Can be useful to take out a mission specialist that they wanted to use to score bonus points, but simply it's a wall that usually requires them to bring a lot of personnel. Then follow that one up with Flapjacks, and even Neuroparasites. Land Eel means they attempt with a big crew. Parasites means there are a lot of personnel, and half of a lot is still a lot. And you get a lot of kills. And then you can follow that one up with another wall. And that could be anything that kills or anything that asks for a lot of guys. Could be something like Found a Secret. You can also play the other way around, that you start with the Found a Secret. Hope you're not playing against a Dominion opponent who can simply run through with a Changeling. And most of the time this is actually more efficient to start with the Found a Secret, play the Neural Parasites then, and then let them run into the Hanonian Land Eel, which will then kill another one. So we can just use that set twice for 2 planet missions. For space, let's take the Arsenal Divided as our lead-in dilemma. It says divide your unique crew members into 2 face-down piles. One pile is stopped. To get past, ship must be staffed and have integrity greater than 27 remaining. That's a nice one. If an opponent is using a lot of universal personnel, they have an easier time getting through. If they're playing only a few universals and with a lot of uniques, as in our deck here, then we are going to stop a lot of them. So this is part wall and part filter. Then we are going to filter out some more. And in this case, we can use things like, for example, Kelvin Show of Force. This gives us a choice of 2 personnel. One of them will then be killed at random. So the idea is they run in with a lot of guys. A few of those go through. Of the ones that go through, we can choose 2. And then one of them will be randomly selected to be killed. And of course, we want to take out personnel that we need for the remaining dilemma. And let's have them run into Vija. Double empathy is tricky anyway. Diplo Anthro computer skill is not particularly difficult. There are personnel who have all those skills. But after the Arsenal and Calvin, hopefully we have taken out all the copies of one of those kills and the ship will then be destroyed. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's a fun combo that you can simply try out. And then we have to find some dilemma combinations that you can use on either planet or space. Most people I've seen recently run 3 planet, 3 space, but you can just as well find 4 space, 2 planets, or the other way around. So let's take an oldie but goldie. Let's take unscientific method into scientific method. The idea is, of course, that unscientific method kills one science guy, and scientific method then asks for 3 more, so that should slow them down. You can put in, for example, the new Spock's brain. To get past most cunning science personnel must relocate to a planet with 23rd century in lore. We actually have a planet like that, attend roll function, and also reallocate dividends, and also investigate quarantine. So there are a lot of targets here. They are stopped until countdown expires. Countdown of 3 is quite long, so that works well to set up the scientific method, especially together with the unscientific method. So 18 dilemmas that can cover 4 planets and 4 spaces, but of course it will have a hard time if somebody's running all planet or all space. We said we have some seed cards that we could take out. We could get rid of all the alternate universe things like Kirk and his ship, and also the 2 Bajoran resistance guys. We could take out the risk is our business if we don't plan to battle, or if we don't want to use that Pac-Man move around the space line. We could also cut this and then add, for example, a dead end or an Edo probe or whatever, or a Kobayashi Maru scenario. But for the moment, since we don't want to invest a lot more time, we'll leave it at that and call it a day. I'm going to put the complete decklist in on TrackCC and put the link into the description once this is up on YouTube. You can try it for yourself, see if there are some personnel that you would like to add instead to make the skill spread a bit more adequate for the dilemmas that you expect to face. And if anybody would like to play against this deck, send me a message. I'll be happy to play on Lackey. I'm sure we can find a time that fits the 2 of us. All right, well, that's it for the moment. We are going to be back next Thursday with a Federation deck. Probably one that is not as all over the place as this one is, but rather one that is a bit more competitive. This one I haven't actually tested. This is just me bouncing ideas around. But for next week, we're going to have a look at a tried and tested Federation deck that can certainly hold its ground in today's OTF environment. And also, if you watch YouTube, on Tuesday, we are going to look at some more dilemma combos. And for this coming Tuesday, we've got a really mean one coming. So prepare yourself. All right, thanks for watching. Until next time, bye-bye.